wasn't pretty, but Aston Villa got the job done once again. It is now 8 wins in 10 under Professor Unai Emery. The last time Villa lost was when that ball came off the crossbar, hit Emi Martinez in the head, and went into the goal in, what was it, the 90th minute, Jorginho for Arsenal, all the way back in mid-February. We are approaching the end of April, and Villa have now jumped up to fifth in the Premier League. And there's something poetic about it in the sense that Steven Gerrard got sacked after his awful start to the season, with Villa looking like we were on course for a potential, relegation fight. And Fulham beat us 3-0 back in October at Craven Cottage. Totally outclassed us. We looked like a team who had no direction, rudderless, a rabble. Who would have believed the next time we played Fulham, we would beat them, move up to fifth, be ahead of Tottenham, Liverpool, Brighton, Fulham themselves, Brentford, Chelsea, all these teams that at that time when Gerrard left were way ahead of us. It's just an incredible achievement from Unai Emery. And I'm just so happy to be living through it, really. I think if you were to look at the game itself, first half, very good. Second half, not good. But so I don't quite know how to describe it. Can you describe a win as underwhelming? Can you describe a win as a frustrating win? I think in a way it kind of reminded me of the Bournemouth, Forest, and Palace games, all of them at Villa Park, where the opposition sat off us, right? They were like Fulham were extremely passive in that first half. They were abject. And I have no idea really what they were doing at Villa Park. Why were they there? They might as well have just sent a bunch of empty shirts and laid them on the pitch and we could just pass around it, because they were passive. And if I was a Fulham fan, you know, I'd have. Oh, God only knows. God only knows what I do. But look, they were terrible in the first half, but Aston Villa at the same time were very good. And it was that left-hand side of the pitch. Alex Moreno causing havoc, and Harry Wilson was constantly having to track him back. I identified Wilson as a player potentially that could cause us trouble. I guess it fell in Villa's favour that Willian got injured before the game, and then Harry Wilson got injured very early on. So maybe that deprived Fulham of some attacking impetus that in the second half might have proved costly to Villa. But ultimately, first half, they didn't deal with Villa's left-hand side at all. Didn't deal with Moreno. I thought Douglas Luiz was fantastic. A metronome, a player just always in the right place, doesn't lose it, always makes the right pass. Just the kind of midfielder that I feel like every single team needs. And you can see why Pep Guardiola didn't want to lose him from Man City all them years ago, why he publicly said he didn't want him to go. So he kind of showed that, particularly in the first half. Goal, set piece, Tyrone Mings getting forward in a kind of reminding me of Buendia's header against Everton last season. McGinn in and Mings with that tie the God of Thunder with that header back. Lovely header. But I think, if you were to be critical of Villa, you'd say that we were so on top in the first half and so good at keeping the ball, so patient, that it felt like that. There's always a risk, I think, with that style of play where you can become a bit lethargic, particularly if the opposition is playing how Fulham are and not really taking it to you at all. And there's always a danger then that you either make a mistake or because you're so on top, you just sort of switch off and think, it's easy. As happened against Stevenage this season in the FA Cup. We were way ahead of them. But just that last 5 minutes fell asleep. And it can be proved costly. And we were fortunate that it didn't prove costly tonight, because in the second half, Villa were pretty poor. Wasn't really much we did other than maybe McGinn's late chance that he whipped just wide. So I think Emery will look at that and say, again, delighted for the win. But I think, again, kind of like Bournemouth, Palace and Forest, whilst we've won all of these games, and now Fulham, whilst we've won all of these games, we're maybe not killing teams off as early as we potentially could do. Maybe we could take a 2-0 lead in the first half rather than being 1-0 up and allowing them to maybe play themselves back into the game early in the second half. But it's really hard to be critical of Villa because they keep doing the job. And let's face it as well, we do have a light squad. And so if you look at the Brentford game, which was a really tough day out, one of the tougher away days you'll have in the Premier League at Brentford this season. And there we had to fight back. So the last 15 minutes in that game against Brentford just a few days ago, Villa had to exert a lot of energy. So maybe a bit of fatigue came in. That light squad maybe showing itself a little bit. I think if Matty Cash had played tonight, I think that might have made quite a difference. Just because I think in the first half there'd have been more of an outlet on the right to get at Fulham, be more attacking. I think at the moment, our right-hand side, it doesn't look on the old eye test as productive as the left-hand side. The left-hand side, it's like you've been watering it for weeks and it just bloomed against Newcastle, became Jack and the bloody Beanstalk. But, when I went to Brentford, one thing I noticed when the game started was that Mings actually stood about 5 or 10 yards further ahead than Konsa. So it's almost like we're structured to do that. That the right-hand side maybe isn't quite as progressive and the left-hand side just goes for it. Which is, again, similar to how Unai Emery played at Villarreal. So, look, 3 more points. Aston Villa now move up to 5th. I mean, just unbelievable. Tottenham have a game in hand, but we also play Tottenham at home. So, and the way they are at the moment, a bit shambolic, really, that you kind of feel confident against them. Manchester United away next. I'll be talking to a United supporter this week about that in a rivalries episode. United, they're a very resilient team, but they're also quite inconsistent, and they're not a team you go to away and think we can't do something there. So again, you're just feeling confident. I'm glad Villa now have quite a few days off because maybe it is starting to show a little bit, and it'd be good to get Kamara, Cash, and even Coutinho and Leon Bailey back as well soon because the squad is just starting to look a bit thin as we now approach these final few games and try and push for Europe. But what an incredible achievement from Emery from when he took over just after that Fulham 3-0 loss to get us to where we are. Is there anything else I can suggest? Looking at a couple of the notes I made. Actually, one thing I did notice in the second half was there was one moment where Watkins won a header after Ashley knocked it forward and Buendia wasn't quite up to speed with it. But Buendia and Watkins then had a row. You could see them arguing. And then you looked at Unai Emery, you looked at his energy off the pitch. And you could sense he was trying to transmit that energy onto the field. And you could see that frustration coming out in that argument that Watkins and Buendia had, because it's quite rare you see Villa players arguing, really. So I think that's probably a note of caution, but also kind of understandable. Having played 2 games in quite quick succession, it's not really something Villa have got too used to in recent years. But look, 3 more points against a team who are ultimately 9th in the league. They're not in great form, but they have just won 2 in a row, having lost quite a few in a row, but they have just won 2 in a row. So you have to say that again, a good, solid win. And just wish it had been, I just wish that we'd had a better second half and killed them off a bit earlier, which I think is something Villa should aim for, particularly at home. But we move on to Manchester United. Big game coming up. Come on, Unai Emery. Come on, Aston Villa. Let's get Europe. We can do it. Up the Villa.